Welcome, Tiny Hands Big Dreams here in southern Ecuador. So we thought today we're going to have a slightly off-topic discussion from your normal homesteady, do things around life in southern Ecuador, to something that affects a lot of people that you may not see coming. Um, and there's been some chatter about on the web. There's been some articles, the dangers of AI. So we're finding as our ages, and our ages, I'm nearly 50, and Elizabeth is 30. How old are you?
34.
34. So we're different ages. I grew up as a teenager with the beginnings of the internet. She grew up as having the internet all the time. You go and you look for information, and it's kind of there, and mostly it's true, and you vet it a little bit.
Yeah, no one ever told me not to believe the internet. It was there. It had information. You could learn from it. That's
That's just the way we grew up. Um, what we're finding is the quantity of information that has allowed us to do what we're doing is to just strike off into the edge of the jungle and like start a complete homestead, build a house, farm a thing, off grid, the whole caboodle. Um, that knowledge is being contaminated in a way that could hurt you, and you need to kind of understand that so that you can prepare for it and start to learn new ways of gathering information. Um, some examples. If you look up, we have goats. If you look up information on how to dose a goat with medicine, how to treat a certain thing on a goat, what a goat can and can't eat, you realize all these weird articles that aren't written quite right, and it's not someone from a different language. There's a lot of Indian articles, stuff like that, but articles that just don't make sense, and they sort of repeat themselves, but they look semi-legitimate. Those are AI. The web is getting full of it fast because they can just populate just a ton of pages really, really quickly.
and for us, we can usually tell. Usually, not always. Can usually tell when something's AI because it's wrong. It it doesn't read quite the way a person would write. It doesn't quite make sense. And then if you have a little bit of knowledge about a subject, you can pick out parts that are just flat wrong. But if you don't know and you aren't aware of like, oh well that couldn't possibly be right, then you might fall for a lot of wrong.
Yeah. Um, so what we're getting at is the old ways of finding information. Oh, I just go look a thing up. Not so much anymore. You're going to need to find the solid sources of information. You're going to need to find, and the books are being published now too by AI, complete and total, sometimes without human intervention, AI books.
The
Ebooks are
ebooks,
the
yeah.
ebooks are out there.
I mean, if you're watching YouTube, you're probably seeing the same ads I am of writing an ebook completely with this AI program, and like you're not even writing, you're not even deciding what it's about. AI will just give you titles, and you pick the one that seems great.
Yeah,
This is incredibly dangerous when you're talking about certain topics. You
yeah.
know,
Or you see those videos where it's a non-human voice, it's close to human, but it's not quite right. They're not just using that because they're lazy or they have bad accent. Those are just AI produced videos. But the information isn't always right. There's a researcher, a really interesting guy that I follow, gets crazy deep into programming and the web, language, humanity in general. And he talks about using AI for research, and he loves it. And he thinks it's great. However, he is someone who has a massive quantity of prior knowledge, and he'll ask AI a question to go and find these certain things, and it does, and then it screws it up. So then he goes for the next question, and he says that same question, but with this parameter added. Oh, but with this exclusion, and he keeps doing this over and over, and he looks at the data, and he's like, almost right, but you did this weird thing because you're a computer, you don't know, and you poisoned the data. Now, if you don't have that level of intelligence and data already in your head, you don't know it's wrong. The newer generation just uses it for everything. Um, use Alexa. You just ask Google. Do you think that answer that it gives you is right? It might be.
it's unbiased.
Um,
People think AI is completely unbiased and factual, but it's been proven over and over that it isn't.
yeah, I'm watching.
So
I'm watching the results of data, the accuracy just do this, and it's accelerating downward. If you do a search for AI is poisoning the web, there's a ton of results. Google is destroying the web with the way Google populates its search results with garbage now. It used to be you search a topic, you'd get some people with their web pages, personal pages were a thing, you'd get user groups,
You get forums.
enthusiasts, yeah,
I mean, the
forums.
one that always used to pop up for me was Backyard Chickens and all of its like little side forums of goats and rabbits and things. And whatever question I asked about an animal, that would pop up. And I realized it doesn't pop up anymore. It's still there. It still exists, but it's not showing up on any search results.
Right. Now, the neat thing about forums, and forums are great, because there's a community of real people until the forum gets totally just populated with AI, which is also happening. Those people act as gatekeepers. They vet that information for you. They look at it, they go, hey, that's not quite right. There's a real good one for solar called DIYsolarforum.com, run by a person. It's populated by really smart people. There's a lot of really good dudes there. A lot of women. But they're very, very knowledgeable, like absolute, just incredible levels of knowledge. And if you say, hey, I'm having a problem, they can solve it. If you go, oh, this, and then you say something wrong, they go, well, are you sure you wanted to do that? Because that'll cause this, that, and you forgot about whatever. Wow. And it's corrected. So the false information really doesn't really happen. The community guides it. Those search results aren't popping up. You're only getting commercial results.
Yeah.
And companies are starting to use AI just to build out their company webpage.
And I think there's something to be said for finding YouTube channels, because if you can look at us talking to you, you know that we're at least telling you what we think. Whether it's right, whether you agree with it, is something else. But you know by watching someone real do something, that's not AI. You can be guaranteed that that is really happening. So, I mean, when it comes to finding information, you don't have a lot of options right now on the internet. It would be nice to have access to books. We do not have that access to books in English.
Yeah.
So we are a little bit more hemmed in by that. Most people can access books. Most people have libraries. I miss libraries. There's a lot of, if you make sure that you're not looking at brand new books, then I think that you have a pretty solid guarantee of good information.
Yeah, pretty much, but there's this onslaught of just the AI just dumping content onto the web. There are forums, Reddit comes to mind, where there is a massive population of not just AI, and that's where they use to test a lot of the AI bots just to see if they pass other users. But there's also a ton of other organizations that try to shape opinion, that try to steer you a certain way to a certain product, a certain way of thinking. Um, how many actual real people opinions you see on there? It's hard to tell because you may find that someone who shares your opinion gets absolutely downvoted and buried, and it's just not there. But it may be even a popular opinion. So it's getting rough. So I guess what we're trying to say is you need to start compiling if you want to do what we're doing, if you want to go off grid, if you want to homestead, if you want to do this in the future, you have to start now, or preferably a few years ago. um, we're already a couple of years into this experiment, and it's not going, it doesn't look like it's going to be good. And so the AI results are poisoning the AI results, and here's where it gets really weird. So someone asks AI for an answer to a question. It searches a bunch of sites and it comes up with some answer. It doesn't really care if it's right or not. It just provides it. Now, those results then get archived, sometimes on the internet, sometimes in other ways, where that becomes part of the information that the next generation of AI looks at. So it's looking at its own AI generated answers. So one wrong answer then gets integrated into the source of knowledge, and it's just sort of accelerating. And there's a ton of people raising a red flag, going, "Hey, we're poisoning the web. We're poisoning all future AI. We don't know what's real or not anymore, and it's getting worse fast.
I mean, we've seen it even in the last few months that it has gotten substantially worse.
There's certain things that it's just really hard, and stuff we mostly know, but can't find a solid source on. Where you'll find a page and you're like, I remember some of this. This is from a certain, like the goat medication. It was like what dosage of penicillin for your goat.
That's pretty important.
Pretty important. And you're like, I remember some of this, but this is a different page than I was looking at before, and then some of this other information repeats itself and isn't right, and something and this and that, and it all traces back to, there's 50 web pages that Google will pop up. It traces back to 2 or 3 sources, one of which may be legitimate, veterinarian or like university. Another one is just someone who kept goats and had it on their web page, but it's a popular web page. Probably right. You never quite know. And it just keeps now. Well, now there's 50 pages that say the same thing, but they came from a very small original data set, and then they
But sometimes they alter slightly and they get a certain number wrong or a phrasing wrong that could make a big difference. And that's kind of what scares me. Is it's one thing when it's broad ideas that may be incorrect, but when we're talking about very specific, could be detrimental to you or your animals, that's where it gets, to me, really scary. Where if you're looking for information that you aren't going to know, and you aren't going to know if it's right, and you see something, you're like, oh, well, this seems legitimate, and this is the correct dosage for a goat, and it's not, well, now you have a big problem.
Yeah.
So then it comes down to where is legitimate information. I think
or recipes.
Recipes are a fun one.
Who was it? You found someone that.
Yeah, Jessica Sowards on Roots and Refuge. I listen to her a lot, and she was actually doing a very similar video, which just sort of struck me as like, I have had this exact same experience of trying to find a recipe, and it seems fine at first glance. You look recipe, whatever, you start following it and go, well, that's not right. That's not going to work. Because knowing enough, you can look at it and you can go, this is not going to work out for me. But if you didn't have a base knowledge of how to make something, you're going to go all the way through the recipe, and the end is going to be a failure. And you're probably not going to realize that the recipe was wrong. If you're starting out learning to cook and your end result is awful, you're probably going to want to give up. And that's not going to help your progress towards what you want to do in life. And that's kind of a disappointing thing to see if people start being, I don't know, sort of led away from all of these things.
It's hard to be successful when you're literally taught wrong by a robot that doesn't care.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're seeing it pop up. We're seeing it be a problem. It's just a different challenge. You just have to gather your information. Some people say print it all, and you could. You could also save it as PDFs and stick it on thumb drives. Paper lasts a long time. Electronics, you save it on a thumb drive, it'll be good for 5-10 years. Every time a new technology comes along, it has a lifespan. Gosh, we still have DVDs and things, and some of those are starting to go south. They just don't play anymore. Like, oh, well, this was a disc I burned. Even less. But that was your archive of information. So your electronic forms could just fade out after a number of years. Hard drives fail after a number of years. Paper,
short of fire and flood,
or bugs.
Yep, you're good. And one of the things that I've started doing is looking for studies, university extension articles, things like that seem at this point in time to be mostly very legitimate. Will that change? Probably, which is why you should do your research now.
Mostly. So the university extension stuff, I would put a lot of weight into. It's pretty good information. It's usually a committee of people. They all have to look at it. They have to agree. It's an old process. It's been around a long time. They're usually people who've studied this for a lot of years. They have experience. Your published scholarly articles, they've actually started to push fully AI written papers, and they've gotten through. And there's been some notable cases where they've talked about that. And just as a proof of concept to see if they could push even a complete BS paper through, and they've done it. So those are starting to happen, although clearly just a very much minority at this point.
So that's basically go get your information now. If you want to raise particular animals, get that information now. A lot of things about um, I know I've done a lot of research about gardening lately because we're sort of floundering, and I was trying to look up biochar and if there's any detriments to certain plants and studies. And again, I just came article after article was just AI nonsense. I'm like, well, this is not helping me.
Look up fertilizing.
Fertilizing,
something.
yeah, same thing.
Oh, I want to fertilize my citrus tree, my mango. Oh, what's that? And you're looking at these sites and you're like, use this, use that, and some of them don't agree. Some this and some repeat the same thing a couple of times in three ways, and you're like, you're not real. Oh no.
Yeah. So trying to find some legitimate sources for that kind of information for animals. If you're going to build a house of any variety, you're going to want some information, and you're going to want it now because I don't think you want to build a house based off of AI. I know I wouldn't want to do that. We're bad enough. I don't need AI to help. So that's kind of it. That's unfortunately there's no perfect answer.
No, it's just
the world we live in.
It's the world we live in. It's a step to take to prepare yourself to be successful. But it's knowledge that you had to have now. You can't do it later and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go gather all that, in a few years.
When I'm ready to do the thing,
no.
you can't. You can't wait. If you think at any point you are going to want to farm, homestead, be off grid,
yeah,
any other thing in life, you need to get the information now. Even if you're not going to use it now, gather it. Let it collect dust. It doesn't hurt anything.
Doesn't hurt anything. All right. Is that it?
I
think it's it. So yeah, we wish you luck. I hope this helps you. I hope you hear from enough places that you heed it, and I hope that you're successful in whatever you want to do. Have a great day.